Hello and welcome to Talking Leadership. This is Eric Perez. Our next guest is currently the CEO of the Tasmanian Seafood Industry Council. Our guest has also been a project manager with the Tasmanian Seafood Industry Council, and in addition to this, he spent 11 years working in a research capacity across the Tasmanian seafood industry, particularly in the areas of octopus, rock lobster, and abalone. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast Julian Harrington. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. How's things?
Very good. Look, thanks for joining us, myself here today. So we're talking leadership, and thank you for being the now 14th guest in the series. I'd just like to start off by asking you, mate, what was your first leadership role and what made you take that on?
Look, in all honesty, Eric, I'd probably go as far back as a child when I was in the Boy Scouts. And I took on a leadership role as the patrol leader way back in my early teens. I was in a scout group that was quite competitive in some of the cross scout group competitions. So I was a leader of a very successful patrol at the Mount Stewart Scouts. So that's probably my first leadership venture. But look, in all honesty, it's probably my role here at the Seafood Industry Council that's been the first real big challenging leadership role, leading both TSIC as an organisation, but providing leadership for the entire Tasmanian seafood industry.
Excellent. So in the transition to taking on that role, in the introduction, you worked with TSIC as a project manager in a management type role there. So what was the trigger for you to step up, mate? What was the thing that made you want to take that next step?
Oh, look, opportunity. I enjoyed working here at TSIC. I loved working on the projects. Projects are great, you got deliverables, got milestones. But I just wanted to take that next step. I had some vision for what I thought TSIC and where I should take TSIC, where I could take TSIC, and where TSIC should go, where the seafood industry should go. The opportunity for taking on the role came forward, and I put my hand up and jumped into it. What is it, about 4.5 years ago now?
Oh, excellent. So in that time, in that 4.5, or let's say 5 years, what would your perspective be on the role of management versus leadership? How are they the same? Are they different in your experience?
Oh, they're the same, but they're very different. I think management, for me, within the project management role, or manager's role, was around leading projects and leading workloads to an agreed endpoint, whereas my role now as the leader or CE of TSIC brings with it much more than just delivering a project. I'm responsible for all aspects of the staff, from work health and safety through to their workloads. I'm a spokesperson for seafood. I'm the one that bears the responsibility of any problems. They're all on my shoulders. I'm the one that has to make the hard choices and implement the hard decisions. So look, I think leadership brings with it just that extra level of responsibility.
Okay, so in that context, Julian, can I ask you the following, because you said you've got to cover a lot of different things in your role. Leaders sometimes make mistakes. So as a leader, how do you engage with a mistake that's attributed to your leadership?
You've got to wear it, mate. You just got to acknowledge that a mistake's been made and very, very, very quickly attempt to rectify that mistake. Don't hide behind it. Don't shift the blame onto someone else. Own it, fix it, move on.
Brilliant. Okay, that's about a summary of most of the responses we've had so far. So as a segue, can I ask you, what's the most difficult part of being a leader?
Look, one of my challenges here, and look, I don't assume, I know you'd face it too, is it's very hard to balance staff. Human resources is a very challenging part of being a leader here at TISIC. It's what people would like to be doing versus what we need them to do is sometimes a bit of a challenge. But I do have an excellent staff down here, so that's made my life a lot easier in that space. But look, the biggest challenge as a leader here at TISIC is probably the reality that I'm not going to ever keep everyone happy. I can't keep everyone happy, and I have to make calls and I have to make decisions that create angst. The other problem of being a leader down here, or the CE of TISIC, is, I said this in a forum not too long ago, unfortunately, my phone only ever really rings with problems. Being the leader, being the CE, you tend to deal with the problems rather than being able to drive projects that have nice, happy outcomes. It's always problem to issue to complaint, and the phone calls can be quite vocal, and the members can be quite vocal sometimes, and I don't mean vocal in a positive way, Eric. I think you can appreciate what I mean there.
Yeah, sure. I know what you mean, and in this industry, and so for the listeners, I work in the seafood industry as well as Julian. I'm the CEO here in Queensland of our association, and so all cards on the table. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think a lot of the leaders listening will be able to relate. So maybe segueing into something a lot more positive. How do you measure success, mate?
How do I measure success? I'm just putting my head down because I've got to plug my computer in. I've just been in a meeting and my battery's not happy at the moment, so that'll help it. How do I measure success? Look, my success is measured by my board's feedback. If my board are happy and comfortable with how I've progressed, the priorities that they've set for me, that's how I measure success, is the board's support and approval and sign off of what I've done and how I've taken the organisation between board meetings. Another sign of success for me is I'm a big advocate that happy staff means that you're doing something right as well. So I really try and have an open, honest, but try and create a flexible and fun workforce here in the TISIC office, because happy staff, I think, are a sign that you're doing a good job as well, as on par with getting the work done, which is the board's approval.
Yeah. So just as an observation, the staff element seems to be very important to you. Did that come about before taking on these roles as a function of you working in organisations, without naming those organisations, obviously, where the staff weren't the focus of the leader of that organisation?
Yeah, look, I think anyone who's been in the workforce for a little while will have had a time or a period in general where the leadership they were under and the direction and the general, I love this word, the general vibe in a workforce was bringing things down. An unhappy workforce is not a nice place to be in, is it, Eric? You spend more time at work than you do at home with your family. So if you dread going to work, it creates a whole new level of challenge. So, I've been there, and I certainly am conscious that I don't want this workplace here at TISIC to go that way, because, again, I'm a big believer that happy staff that get flexibility and the appreciation they deserve work a lot better for you, and you have far better outcomes.
Yeah, okay, and that spins off into what you were saying before in terms of wanting to focus on your staff. So look, I've got 3 statements here I'd like to quickly run by you to get a bit of a sense of where your headspace is at with them. So the first one is, on-the-job experience develops better leaders.
100% support. I'm a huge believer in you need to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. You've got to lead by example. That's exactly what that is, isn't it? The best way to understand different aspects of what you're trying to run or be the leader of. The best way to understand it is to get in and get your hands dirty and actually experience it.
So in addition to that question, or as an offshoot of that question, what's your view on formal education helping to develop better leaders? So more critically, is that important? Do you have to have that formal education to be an effective leader?
Look, I don't. Yes and no. That's a cop-out answer, isn't it? Yes and no. You don't. Some people are natural leaders, aren't they? Some people just they can own a room, they can own people just by their presence and the way they talk. Some people can just do it. Some people can get all the training under the sun and still not achieve a presence in a room, even though they could be a really good leader. So I think no. But at the same time, yes. Look, everyone can upskill, everyone can retrain, everyone needs a boot up the bum sometimes and a reminder of how you need to do things and how you can do them better. So look, training I think is very important. I'll put that into context that TISIC supported a 2-day Australian Institute of Company Directors course a few weeks ago. And I think even though my staff, I've got excellent staff, I still think I took them all along because upskilling and recalibrating your mindset is the best way to make sure that both yourself and your staff are refocused or focused in the right areas.
Yeah, okay. Can I just unpack something that we were talking about before? So this thing about leadership is critical in an organisation and so on. But when you said you have to, good leaders can come into a room and own the room, can you unpack that a bit for us?
We've all met characters that you just get a sense from just how their mannerisms, how they talk, how they can hold a conversation that they drag people towards them and drag. Oh, how do you put it, Eric? You know exactly what I'm trying to say. Some people just have it.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. And why? And again, this
some people can get up and give a 10-minute presentation with no notes and just hold the room and people go away thinking, wow. Some people can prepare for 2 weeks and have something brilliant on paper, but they just can't get it out.
Sure. And why I was asking, and again, that this wasn't any kind of gotcha moment from me, is what I've been finding in the discussions that I've been having with colleagues of ours and other leaders across different sectors is this idea about being a good communicator. And do you find in your travels that is an essential capability of any good leader that you've met?
Oh, look, it's essential, mate. It's absolutely essential. I mean, I have my own little rules here in my office space. I try and have at least 5 minutes with each staff member every day just to have a chat, see how they're going, see what they're up to, see if there's anything I can help with. Open door policies, open phone policy, communication, two-way effective communication is essential.
Brilliant. So last of the three statements, and this one's thrown a few people, so I'm hoping you've got ready to go. Awesome answer that I've never heard before, but here we go. Leaders are born, not made.
I think this relates back to what I was talking about earlier, wasn't it? That some leaders are just born. I think they just have it. It's a cop-out answer here, Eric, but some leaders are made, aren't they? Some people don't want to be a leader, but they fall into a leadership role, or they elevate themselves up a career path into a leadership role and end up doing a good job, but they weren't a born leader. They had to get the training, the skills, the experience to get there. So a cop-out answer, but I agree with both aspects.
Okay, no, that's fine. Look, the next question relates to some work that I'm doing as part of my own studies, and I just want to get your take on core leadership capabilities. So communication seems to be coming out quite strongly, but the two that I'm looking at, and again, I just want your perspective on this, because as with all this, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, I think, a function of our experiences is my proposition is that strategic thinking and foresight are probably the most critical core leadership skills into the future. So leaders need these two things to be effective leaders into the future.
Yeah, look, I'll throw a tangent. I gave a talk yesterday to our regulator here, just a bit of an overview of what TISIC is and what TISIC does. And I think one slide I had up sort of relates directly to what you just said about strategic foresight and planning, and that is, I think our industry, our seafood industry, not just here in Tasmania but Australia-wide, has come out of a long period of being a very reactive industry, sticking our head in the sand and then just reacting as things pop up. And my board supports my shift of how we're operating TISIC to become more proactive, to look at those issues and those problems that are out there in front of us and try and tackle them and get them under control before they rear their ugly little heads. So, again, if you're not planning for the future, you're just reacting to the past, aren't you?
Wow, okay. And that's in that vein, so as part of your leadership travels, this idea about looking forward is critical to what you're doing? Definitely.
Look, we've just come out of a strategic planning process here at TISIC, and we've got some really big ticket items that we want to look and put on the table in the next 4 to 5 years. That provides a platform for me to develop a work plan and strategies to try and meet those challenges in a meaningful way. Look, we're no different to the other states. We've got our pros, we've got our cons, we've got our challenges that are going to take a lot of time and effort and resources to try and get somewhere with. But unless you've got them in front of you and you have a plan, you have a strategy and you deliver that, you're always going to be on the back foot. The hardest step's the first step, mate. The hardest step is always that first step.
Yes, always. So, final question. What would you say to a younger version of yourself about being an effective leader?
Oh, wow, that's a great question, Eric. What would I say to my younger self? I've always just grabbed the opportunities as they've come along, so I'd probably just encourage myself to grab all those opportunities as they come along. Don't be scared to grab them and see where life takes you.
Okay, on that exceptionally positive note, I'd like to thank you, Julian. That was Julian Harrington, the Chief Executive of the Tasmanian Seafood Industry Council. Julian, I appreciate your time, mate.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thanks for the chat.
No worries. Thanks, everyone, and I'll catch you on the next podcast. That was Julian Harrington, CEO of the Tasmanian Seafood Industry Council. This is Eric Perez, and I'd like to thank you for joining me again on Talking Leadership. If you'd like to listen to any of the previous podcasts, please go to www.talkingleadership.podbean.com. That's www.talkingleadership, all one word, .podbean, podbean.com. The site now has a become a patron function. If you like the content and you'd like to help me develop more of it, please hit the button and see if you can contribute on a monthly basis to developing more content into the future. Or if you'd like to become a sponsor of the program, please send me an email to the following email address, and that is TLbyEricPerez@gmail.com. That is TLbyEricPerez@gmail.com. And lastly, but definitely not least, I'd like to thank the inaugural sponsor of the podcast, Sydney Fish Market. Do you know that Sydney Fish Market is Australia's home of seafood? It is the Southern Hemisphere's largest fish market and Australia's premier destination for seafood. It supports industry with initiatives to inject value back into the fishing communities, which is a priority for the market, as well as ensuring a viable seafood industry for future generations. The Sydney Fish Market is proud to recognise industry champions and supports the development of our industry's future leaders. So for more information about trading with the market, please visit www.sydneyfishmarket.com.au or give them a call on 02 9004 1106. That number again is 02 9004 1106. And as always, thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.